In this video, we're going to explore some of the components or widgets that we can use in an Android layout. We're also going to look at the relative layout, which confuses some people but is generally a very good choice to use for a liquid layout. We're going to look at buttons, EditText, TextViews, Autocomplete Text, and then in a future video, we are going to see how we can program against those different widgets in a Java class called an activity. So to begin with, we have a layout that I started in a previous video. We have a little text field and a button, and we have to decide where are we going to put our other widgets. Now, we don't want to jump in too quickly. We want to think about this carefully because we want to think about the Android quality guideline. If we take a look at the Android quality guidelines, we see Simplify My Life, and we see Only Show Me What I Need When I Need It. People get overwhelmed when they see too much at once. So in other words, don't complicate the user's view. So before we jump in and start adding widgets, let's think about which widgets we want to add and where we want to add them. What I recommend is do a storyboard, and I have a separate video that discusses this. In this example, I'm using Fluid UI. And with a storyboard, we can think about what our application looks like in advance. So here's the initial storyboard of Plant Places Mobile, which is the example app that I use. And here's UI mistake number 1. I have a menu screen. Don't do that. Take the user right where the action is. This is another Android guideline. Take the user right to the screen that the user wants to use 80% of the time, or 80% of the users want to use. Think about Shazam. If you have the Shazam app, as soon as you start it, it takes you to the screen where you can tap on the screen and it will listen for a music sample. You don't have to go through a splash screen, a login screen, or any kind of menu screen. It takes you right there. So don't do what I did here. I'm going to hit GPS a plant. And we're going to see this is a mock-up of what the GPS screen would look like. I strongly recommend doing this so that you can evaluate every widget that's on the screen first before you actually make the layout. Don't give yourself extra work by adding widgets that you'll end up taking away later. So we have latitude, longitude, then maybe a pause button, a select plant button, a description, a save, an upload, and a take photo. And that is how the original plantplaces.com mobile looked. Now the advantage is, since we're basically remaking an app that already exists, I can show you a before and after. This is the before screen. You see we have latitude, longitude, pause GPS, select a plant, where is the plant, description of the plant, save to phone, take photo. This is a fairly complicated view, and I was quick to get rid of this. But what is nice is you can see where a relative layout is really handy because we have widgets all over. We see that latitude, longitude is flush left, pause GPS is flush, pause GPS is flush right, select a plant and then a label next to it, a label and a text view and an edit text, a label and an edit text, and then 3 buttons together, so on and so forth. You see each of these widgets are positioned relative to each other. Now, here's the new GPS screen, and what you'll see here is that we have wider use of autocomplete text. We have a chronometer. We still have some text views, which are essentially labels. We still have a fairly good positioning of the widgets on our screen, but notice there are far fewer widgets, even though it's doing a lot of the same features and even more. So let's try to mock this app. We're going to have the pause GPS button all the way flush right, which is what we already have with a previous video that we did. We're going to do a text view for latitude and the value of latitude, a text view for longitude and the value of longitude. Now the reason why that's a text view is this is something that the user will not edit. If the user will not edit it, then we want to make it look like it cannot be edited. The latitude and the longitude are going to be provided to us by the Android operating system. The user's not going to change those. We have GPS age and the chronometer. The reason for this is we want to say how old or how fresh that latitude and longitude are. Because we might say only update it every 60 seconds or only update it every so many meters. And there's a chance that we might not be receiving GPS signal at a certain point. So we want to give a hint on how old the GPS is. Then plant name, location, and description. Plant name and location are both autocomplete texts, and description is an edit text. That's freeform text. So an edit text is freeform text, where an autocomplete text is freeform text, but it has an added value where as you type, it can go against a list of possible options and it can autocomplete as you're typing. You're probably familiar with these. Maybe you've seen them on the web or something like that. Underneath that, we have a series of buttons: show, save, take photo, and saved. So this is the layout that we're going to try to make. I'm going to move this off screen for a moment, and we will take a look at our user interface. I'm going to double click on the title. Looks like, oh, okay, looks like I already did that. Let me double click on the title bar so we can maximize our real estate. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I am going to look for TextView. And remember, if there's something that the user cannot change, we want to make it look like a label. So up at the top, I have plain text view. Let's see what we already have. It looks like we already have a hello world. Okay, I can repurpose that hello world. We can, whoops, okay, didn't go where I wanted. Okay, so for the hello world, I'm going to come to the properties on the left side, I'm sorry, on the right side, and I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to change the ID. Actually, for that one, this is just going to be a label. I'm not too worried about the ID. We'll leave the ID as it is. I am going to change the text, though, because hello world doesn't make much sense. So I click on the ellipsis, and what I want to have instead of hello world is the word latitude. Now, this is interesting. You see, it takes us to a little wizard here, and I have to choose new resource, and then this is off screen. Let me bring it back on. New string value, and then it takes me to yet another screen. Resource name, I'm going to say LBL latitude. Resource value latitude. It seems like a lot of work just to change a label. But notice that it's putting it in a file called strings.xml, and that's important. The strings.xml is going to hold our default language. But because we're putting all of our visible text into an XML file, it gives us an outstanding opportunity where we can internationalize. If I wish to support a different language, all I need to do is I need to change, I need to add translations into something like values_ES for Spanish or values_FR for France. So it makes it very easy for us to internationalize our app, and think very seriously about that, because, one moment, I need to go ahead and, yeah, that's fine. Think very seriously about that, because if we support multiple languages, then we might have a wider audience for our app. We may have an audience that we wouldn't have otherwise, because maybe our app, which is available around the world, might have less competition in some parts of the world than others. Okay, so LBL latitude, and you see that text there says latitude. What I'm going to do now is grab another text view, and I have to be very careful here. Notice that it's giving me a hint. Align parent left below LBL latitude. That works, so I drop that. And I have a new text view. For the new text view, I'm going to change the ID to LBL longitude. And I'm going to change the text as well, and we're probably familiar with how this works. So I click on the ellipsis, and I say new resource again, new string value, and resource name, LBL longitude, resource value, longitude. Okay, and once again, we're going to choose save, or okay, and then there we go, longitude. Okay, those are the static fields that are going to hold just the word latitude and longitude. We also need some dynamic fields here that are going to hold the actual values for latitude and longitude. So those are also going to be text view. I'm going to drag and drop one to the right of LBL latitude, align bottom LBL longitude. Okay, I delicately move this, and I'm going to say You know what I could do actually, what might be even a better user experience is make it to the left of BTN pause and above LBL longitude. That's going to give it a little bit better spacing, and we can play around with this later. But one thing I'm not really keen on is you see it kind of runs right up against those. Oh, you know, I don't know. Maybe it is better if we shift it over a little bit. Let's say to the right of LBL longitude. Well, we can always play with it in the XML editor later, so I'll leave it like that. Okay. Now, this is something I'm going to program against. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the ID to LBL latitude value. I want to make it a name I'm going to remember later. So LBL latitude value. And I am going to change the text to just a default a text value I can use over and over again. We'll just make it 0.0, which indicates that we don't yet have a latitude value. So resource name, I'm going to call it LBL0, and resource value, we'll just say 0.0. So I'm entering a number, but we're treating it as text. I choose OK, and there we go. Okay, next text view, going to be very similar. We are going to say, it's a little tricky to get this guy. Tell you what's going to be easier. Let me drop this back over. Let me zoom up a little bit. That's going to be much easier to see anyway. Okay, that looks good. So another text view. I'm going to try and drop it to the right of LBL longitude and align bottom LBL longitude. Okay, and text size. Let's see. We're going to say text. Now this is easy. We can reuse that 0.0 that we created earlier. So I just scroll through my existing strings and I select LBL0 and I choose OK. You see that's updated now to 0. Okay. Padding. Left. You see it's running right next to longitude. This one's going to be a bit easier to change in the XML under the covers. So let's hold this thought. Let's come back to this one in a bit. Okay, I am going to change the ID because, again, this is something I'm going to program against. So I'm going to say LBL longitude value. Okay. And we kind of see what's going on here. I'm going to grab another plain text view, drop that down below longitude. So let me see if I can squeeze this so that we can see where it's going. I grab my plain text view, drop it under longitude, align parent left. So you see there's a little green bar on the left which says each of these are aligned to the left side of the containing container, the containing parent. And then align bottom BTN pause, we can move it up below LBL longitude. Okay, this one, I'll scroll back to properties. ID, we're going to say LBL GPS age. Okay, and then the text, we're going to change this to just GPS age. And again, new resource, so this is getting a bit old hat here. New string value, resource name LBL GPS age, resource value GPS age. Note that I'm not including colons here. In a limited display, every character counts. So what we'll do is we'll go in and adjust the padding later, the left padding, instead of using colons. Okay. Now, we want to add a chronometer, which is kind of a countdown. And in this case, it's going to be a count up. It's just saying here's how old the GPS age is. So I'm going to scroll down a bit, and I'm going to grab this chronometer, and we will align left with our labels that are up above, and align bottom with the GPS age label. And for this, I'm going to give it an ID. Remember, anything we're going to program against, we want a good ID. So I'll say CHR GPS age, like so. Okay? So at this point, we have quite a bit of information here. For the sake of time, on this presentation, I'm just going to add one of the labels and one of the autocomplete texts. The rest I will do outside of this presentation just so it doesn't get too long. So I scroll up, and again, plain text view. I'm going to drop that, align parent left, and this one is going to say plant name. So ID, we'll say LBL plant name, and then for the text, okay, I'm going to say click the ellipsis. Okay, new resource, new string value, resource name, LBL plant name, resource value, plant name, and okay. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an autocomplete text. The idea with the autocomplete text, take a look at this. As soon as we start typing, I'm starting to type Magnolia in this screen capture. You see it's filtering a list down, and at this point it's only showing us Magnolias. So I am going to grab an autocomplete text, which I find under Expert, Autocomplete Text View. Drag and drop, and we're going to do to the left of, to the right of plant name, and align bottom plant name. And I am going to change the text. This time I want it to be blank by default. So I'm going to click on the ellipsis, and I'm going to make a new kind of global resource. I'm just going to call it LBL blank, and the value is going to be nothing. Okay, so that's just going to leave it blank. There we go. And then the ID, I'm going to scroll up in the ID. I'm going to say ACT plant name. Now you see it's a little bit tricky because without anything in there, it's a very short widget. And actually what I want it to do is consume the entire screen width, especially as the user goes to maybe a landscape mode. So I'm going to zoom this down a little bit, and I'm going to scroll this all the way to the right, and we see align parent right. Okay, now it's tricky again because take a look at this autocomplete text. It's consuming a lot of real estate on top of other real estate, and I really want it to be below the pause GPS. So I can move it down also, align top. Well, align top LBL plant name, that's not really what I want. And you know what? Sometimes you just don't get what you want by using the WYSIWYG editor. And this is when it's good to click on the text view. And in this case, I've found the autocomplete text view with the ID ACT plant name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say Android, layout, and we're going to say below. Layout below, you see it autocompletes. I'm going to choose ID, and then I'm going to choose that button BTN pause. Now here's the trick. If I save, and I go back to design view, you'll see sure enough it's under BTN pause, but what it did is it shrank that autocomplete text because I also said align it to the bottom of plant name. Well, I don't want a shrunk autocomplete text. That's going to be hard to type in. So let's take out the align bottom. So align bottom LBL plant name, I'm going to cut this, I'm going to save, and I'm going to go back to design. And you see now, okay, now we're looking better because now the autocomplete text is at the height that I want, but it's no longer aligned to the bottom of the plant name. Oh, okay. So what we need to do is do that in reverse. We need to, instead of saying make the autocomplete text aligned with the plant name, why don't we make the plant name label aligned with the autocomplete text? So I lower it, and we say align baseline ACT plant name, or align bottom ACT plant name. Yeah, that's fine. Scroll down, there we go. I kind of like the align baseline, to be honest with you. It looked like that was just a little bit higher. Okay, that works. So you see, that's a nice centered view. Now, I can continue, and as I mentioned, just for the sake of time in this video, I will do some of these off screen and then commit to GitHub. I'll do location and description off screen. I'll go ahead and do the show, save, take photo, and saved, which are all buttons. So just a few more to go then. Actually, I'll just do 2 of the buttons. Well, yeah, it doesn't matter. So I scroll until I find the button. Probably went too far here. Okay, so button. Okay. And let's see, below ACT plant name and align, let's do an align left. Align parent left. Yep, okay, there we go. So here's my button. Okay, button. I am going to bring the properties over. Whoops. And we definitely want to change the ID on the button. So I go to the ID and we're going to say btn show saved. And then the text again. Click the ellipsis. Okay, new string btn show saved. I'll call it LBL show saved. That's fine. And then resource value show saved. Okay. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another button and drop it next to show saved. Okay. For this one, why don't we align that right? So I've widened the screen a bit to show this aligned right. Now the trick is, because it's a relative layout, we can't really say, hey, can you go to the middle of the screen? So what we have to do here to have these meet in the middle, like I have on the screen capture here, is we have to nest a layout. And in this case, we are going to drag a linear layout. And I'll tell you what, I might need to finagle this a little bit, but we'll just drop it right below plant name. And then I'm going to take my two buttons, and notice over on the right, I'm dragging both buttons into that linear layout. Okay, now the linear layout has kind of gone in a funny location here. So let's see if we can make this work. Drag it right below plant name. Okay, looks a little bit better. Drag it right up a little bit. And try and squeeze that guy so it fits both of these. And you see, no matter what I do, I can drag this all I want, it's going to keep going down. The reason is the layout height is set to fill parent, so it wants to consume every pixel after that layout starts. I'm going to change that to wrap content, and you see as soon as I do that, the layout kind of squishes nicely together. And it only is consuming that area around the show saved and this thing called new button that we're going to need to rename in just a moment. Okay. What I can do now, since I'm in a linear layout, is I can change my layout weight. Take a look at this. The layout weight for show saved, I'm going to set that to 1. The layout weight for new button, I'm going to change that to 1 as well. What Android will do then is it's going to sum those two numbers and make a fraction out of them. So 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 over 2 means show saved will take up half the screen. 1 over 2 means new button will take up half the screen. If I gave new button 2, then the sum would be 3. This would be 1 over 3, this would be 2 over 3, and they would take proportionally 1/3 and 2/3. But it looks a lot neater to have them equally weighted, so let's go ahead and leave them equally weighted. For the text, well, let's see, I'm going to change this new button now. I'm going to change it to btn, and we call this one take photo. So scroll back over, take photo. Okay, btn take photo is that's going to be our button name. And then I'm going to edit the text as well. And the text, we know how to do this now. Click on the ellipsis. And new resource, new string value. And we're going to call this LBL take photo. And we'll just say take photo. Now, a caution here. Another one of the Android design principles is pictures are faster than words. So instead of show saved, why don't we grab some clip art that has maybe a disk? Instead of take photo, why don't we grab some clip art that shows a picture of a camera? The added bonus is when you have pictures, you don't need to internationalize those. So for the moment, we're going to leave these both as is, but later we can come back and have a picture of a disk here and a picture of a camera. That's going to make this look a lot nicer. Next, we still have our last button, which is going to stretch the entire width, and that's our save button. So I am going to, and actually that one would be better for a floppy disk than show saved. Maybe show saved would choose some other icon. For this button, I'm going to drag it below our linear layout, and I'm going to stretch it all the way across. So it stretches across the entire width because this is the most important. we want to make sure we're saving things. So the ID, we change to btn save. And the text, guess what? This is where I said we could use a floppy disk, or we could just put some text in. In this case, we'll put in some text. New string value, and we're going to say LBL save and resource value save, and OK. OK, almost done. Okay, the only other thing you notice is in a previous video we made this custom button color. We want to keep those colors uniform throughout our application, and that is a property called background. Now I can go to background here, and I can click on the little ellipsis, and gosh, wow, what am I looking for here? Well, we could try to find the right value, but this is a case where it's easier just to go under the covers. So let me go up to the text and let me borrow the background value I did in a previous video on that pause button. So I'm going to copy Android background. And I'll tell you, the more you get used to this XML editor, it becomes easier than the WYSIWYG editor if you like editing these things this way. So I paste yellow-green bevel. As I said, we did this in a previous video, but the yellow-green bevel is what's called a 9-patch image. A 9-patch image can stretch. It's smart enough to stretch and know what pixels it can duplicate and what pixels to keep the same. So I choose Save. Now I go back. Give it a moment to render, and take a look what it's doing. I didn't like the Save button. I might need to go back and play with that a little bit more. But if you see what it did here, is it takes the same image and it's able to stretch it, and it knows it's basically an image made of 9 different compartments, one for each of the corners. Those never stretch. So the 4 corners, there's 4. Then what's between the 2 corners on the left, what's between the 2 corners on the right, those will stretch going up. What's between the 2 corners on the top and bottom, those will stretch side to side. And what's in the middle, that will stretch up and side to side. So using that 9-patch image, we can make, okay, looks like I just did I not add that there? Let's see, let me go back and add for our last button, save. Okay, we'll try that again. Using our 9-patch image, we're able to make a custom button color that keeps a theme throughout our application. So with that, that will finish up our video on layouts, on the relative layout, nested layout, buttons, label, EditText, TextView, Chronometer. I'm going to go ahead and add a few more widgets up here, and then I'm going to commit this to GitHub and push this video out to YouTube. So let me know how it goes. I know that these relative layouts tend to be a little bit tricky. Hopefully this helped you. A lot of times nesting is the key. We want to be able to support both portrait and landscape mode and make it look good both ways. So layouts are very important in Android. Let's not forget to give them the attention that they need. Thank you.